Kia ora, welcome along to League and Order podcast. Lucky enough to be joined by Blake Ayshford again. Last day of lockdown in the hotel. Blake, how are you faring?
I'm good, man. I've sussed it out over the last 2 weeks. Really starting to run this place. Seen all the games, gone around the yard a couple of times. It's been good, but be sad to see it go. But I'm out. Get to see the wife and kids tomorrow, which are.
Mate, you want to get out and get some sun by the looks of it. Jesus, you look like a vampire.
Oh, mate, it's hot in here. There's nothing, no windows, nothing. So I'm scared of the sunlight at the moment.
Yeah, so you called it the yard, but that's basically the car park that everyone gets to walk around and then you head back up.
Yeah, that's for you people out there. But when you're locked down,
that's the name.
Yeah, I've made some shanks and stuff just in case anything happens. You never know, man. It's dangerous in here.
Oh man. And, of course, Lavina Good and Tony Kemp joining us as well. Where do we start? Let's start with the Warriors and let's open up the door. I feel like some positivity, so I'm going to go to you first, Tony. That performance against Melbourne.
Yeah, well, I guess the start was pretty positive. Boys jumped out, and couldn't quite get the couple of tries that they needed to, I suppose, stay in the game, as we saw later on. And normally a Melbourne Warriors game is the highlight of the year. If there was a local derby, Melbourne Warriors is as close as it gets to Brisbane Warriors. Brisbane being the first game they kicked off with in 1995, and they use those two games as the local derbies. But mate, you're talking about positives. Look, I can't really see a hell of a lot of positive coming out on the football field between now and the end of the year. I think we're going to wait till the end of the season. We will see a new broom come through the club and sweep a number of positions to the side. And it'd be really interesting to see who they actually do secure as head coach and who he brings in. So, there's been people from all walks of life making comment about what's needed here and what's needed there. But on the take of what's actually happening, I think there's been a bit of a pull-up on the reins after the Stephen Kearney stuff. I think they've taken it on the chin and picked themselves up off the canvas because of the timing of the decision. And really, it looks like now that the decision-making in and around the next step forward is going to be taking over the next, rest of the season, towards the end of the season, their pre-season and so forth. So, yeah, mate, I feel good. Lavina's looking, pretty good when he said they might only get a couple of wins out of the rest of the season. It really does remind me a little bit of 2005, 2004, where Ando decided to go really big with the boys and we hung in there for 20 minutes and then got blown off the park. And I'm not saying that our boys are unfit or too big. I just think with the new rules, if you're not hanging in there with teams, they do tend to get away on you. And we've seen in the last 2 weeks, that's exactly what's happened to the Warriors. The reason why, well, I think that they're unhappy. I don't think they have that full commitment. I think it's an attitude problem, and I don't blame them. I think, when the going gets tough, the boys are looking over the shoulder and saying, mate, well, we don't really know what's going on at the club, so I'm not going to... And I've got to say, I watched Ken Mamalo a couple of times in a second efforts, and Ken Mamalo last year would have made some big plays on those second efforts, and what I saw last week was Ken sort of saying, yeah, man, I'm not happy. And I think that residue's going through the whole team.
I think it was tough for the Warriors last year having to rely on their wingers and fullback to make most of the yards for them, and that was an issue from last year. Looking at this year, when I was watching the game, I sent out a few texts for the first opening 12 minutes or the opening half of the first stanza, and I thought the Warriors are all right. They look good. They look hungry. They look committed. But then as soon as it started to get away on them, there were some dodgy decisions from the ref, I thought, which weren't appropriate, and then just a couple of errors, and then all of a sudden the heads were down. And I know they didn't want to lose, but there's nothing about that display from the Warriors that showed me that they wanted to win either. And I guess there's dissension in the ranks. Blake would be able to tell us more than anyone, but are they pissed off that Stephen got the sack? Are they really dirty because of it? Do they want to have people in the shed talking to them that aren't even meant to be on the coaching staff, but it'll look like that they're instructing play out there? Do they want to have a coach named as soon as possible? Or do the Warriors just want to come home and start again next year? Because that's the way they played in the second half.
Yeah, I'd say the players, majority of them would want to come home or at least get their families over. But trying to look towards positives, I think, we will win more than the 2 games that Phil Gould suggests, because you got to think, like, Roger's out this week, so we are playing the Broncos, but it'll be tough without Roger. But you're getting Fuss and Ken back, and then in another week or 2, I think Nate Roach is starting to slowly come along, and then we get Jazz Tavanga back. So once they will win games, but you got to think on the weekend they played a team that very rarely loses 2 in a row. It's not like they played the Gold Coast Titans or someone like that. They did play Melbourne Storm. But
thank God they didn't play the Titans.
Yeah.
Played well against the Bronx, eh?
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. This week's going to be a tough game, I think, with all the criticism with the Broncos. And now, the boys have lost Roger. And I suppose it's going to be a time for someone else to step up. I mean, Peter Hickey will probably go to the back, and we'll get Jared Beale back in the centres. So, this will show whether they're still committed, because the Broncos aren't going that good. And, if the boys go out and put a good performance, I still think they want to win. As a footy player, you don't want to go out and embarrass yourself. And I think the Warriors have got like 11 players or something off contract, something ridiculous like that. So,
yes, I'll be happy about that.
Yeah, well, if you're a player, you want to go out and try and put your best foot forward to try and get some money. So,
yeah. Look, hey, just a couple of things in that. We touched on it. When we were talking right at the beginning of our first podcast for the challenge that Mook's had week in, week out with this team over in Sydney. And it was all about the mental application. The footballing side of things, I think, are less to worry about than the application of their mental state. And it's proven to be right. Just reading what Cameron said about the team coming home if they can't get their family over, and where'd you hear that from this morning? I think there is a little bit of dissent in the camp at the moment from a couple of the players that don't. When you're seeing the Aussie boys and their wives, and I guess this is what's going on over there, Blake, and they're getting time together, and that downtime is really appreciated because your family's around, and you've got those Kiwi boys, and they're really whānau based on their Pacific culture. There is a little bit of, angst amongst the players about, geez, if it's not good for the goose, why is it good for the gander type thing? And, a guy asked me, well, what would you do? Well, if your contract's up, that's one thing. But if you're playing and trying to create value, one of the last things you'd be making pretty obvious is that you wanted to come home. Because what the club would do is the first thing they'd say is, well, here's an out for us, so go home and I'll probably forget about your contract. But the second thing is, what happens over the next 10 to 12 weeks with your salary? If you go home, you're probably not going to get paid. And I would tend to say that you check on what your player manager's advising you, because I'd be advising my players to dig their heels in and give them some shots of reality to say, well, it may be tough on your family now, but what's it going to be like in 3 months' time?
But then you also got to remember that not all the players are on that good coin, that good bit of money, and it's not they don't get their full amount now. So a lot of them are like, oh, we're only getting, I think, 30% or something of our wage, where we could go home and work and earn more than that and be with our families. So, like, these are the people that are on minimum wage rugby league I'm talking about, and not on that much. So there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of, these guys are getting this, we're not getting this, stuff like that.
Blake, can I just pass a message on to those who are keen to come home and work? I've now been, 12, 13, 14 weeks without work. It's hard to find another job in New Zealand. Just to the lads who might be watching or listening, it's really, really hard. Like, there's a lot of New Zealanders looking for work, and a lot of New Zealanders who are also quite keen to be on even just 30% of their pay. That being said, I do understand where they're, like, I feel sorry for them in that situation. They're away from their families. They're only on 30% of their actual wage. But shit, it's hard back here in New Zealand in terms of trying to find a job.
I'm not saying, like, be sorry for them. I think they've got, like, things lined up already as... Oh,
okay. If better than me then.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I think the emotional state of the public and looking at them saying, unlucky boys, you're getting shit wages to go out there and get bashed in every week. Well, the difference is you're getting shit wages to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to jump on a van to get taken to a building site to be a labourer. Look, man, what are your managers actually talking to you about? You want to be a footballer, or do you want to be a labourer? Because what I know, like, there's not many blokes in there with PhDs that are going to walk into a doctor's surgery and become a plastic surgeon, for instance. You know, they're going to come back and they're going to actually get into the real workforce. There is such a difference between being a footballer and doing what you love to do, even if you are only getting 30% of your wages, and the shot of reality of getting up at 5:30 in the morning to get to work on a cold, wet, damp day on a building site. And, you know, this is what I was saying about your player managers. If they're not giving you the good advice, fellas, get a new player manager. You know, because if I was a player manager, I'd be saying to you and sitting down with your family, here's reality, the dose of reality. Just knuckle down. Yes, it's going to be another three months of tough love, okay? But you're working towards next year. Things are going to change. We're going to reboot. Hopefully, we'll come out of COVID, and let's reassess it then. But here's the reality: you come home, you're going to be getting up at 5:30, going to work on a building site. Is that what you want? And if they say yes,
yeah, well, that's the thing, Tony. You touched on it before. Some of the boys are more family orientated, and like, you know, you can't knock them for that. Like, they love their family more than they love the game. Well, I'm not saying that, but like, family's first for them. Religion, family, that's first. So for them to come home, I don't think it's whether their job is the thing. It's around being around family.
And you can't take away the fact that their coach has been sacked as well. So they go overseas with their coach, and they're in lockdown with their coach, and they're, you know, 1/3 of the way through a very strange season. The only ones that are away from their family and don't have a home crowd, and they lose their leader. And whether or not that was the right decision, we've already discussed that last week, it's got to take its toll on some of those players. You know, a lot of them really respected Stephen Kearney to the point where they were willing to go to battle for him, and those that didn't still feel as though that they weren't approached by anyone. It was a business decision, Tony. You mentioned that last week. It came down to money and performance-based, and it didn't work, and let's move on. It looked to me the Warriors weren't ready to move on at the weekend because they were overshadowed, not just by a better side, but a team that was hungrier and wanted to play rugby league. And the Warriors had that attitude like, well, we're over here, you know, we don't have our whānau here. We miss our family more than anything, and people are being condescending to us. We've got some dork who works for another television station saying that we'll never win 2 more games for the rest of the year, and you sack my coach without even asking how I feel about it. That's the way to play.
And you know what, you both bring up a really valid point, because what Blake has said about, you know, this is, and it's so true, that Pacific players sometimes love other things than the money. You know, the money comes, you know, if you're a talented Pacific Islander and you're seen as a breadwinner, you're feeding everyone, not only just in your immediate family, but the wider family. We all know how that works. Religion plays a massive part in it. And the same thing about the business decision. Why didn't you ask me? I'm being hurt. So that brings the point of why don't you do your homework right at the beginning? So I'm going to go back to structure. Wouldn't your recruitment people, for instance, understand what they're getting themselves into and the people that they're dealing with, understanding that religion and family probably is a little bit more than what money means to them, like what Blake has just said. And then when you're talking about decision making, who are those leaders that you really need to connect with the leaders in your team, so that they understand that they're not going to get hurt? And I think one of the biggest problems, and I've always talked about it structurally, is you bring in a bloke like O'Sullivan that has no idea how that works, probably hasn't been to a church in South Auckland, doesn't know that Manu's sister, for instance, was the leader of the family, that you'd spoke to her before you'd spoke to Manu, because she was the one making all the decisions, and understand how that whole cultural thing works. And the reason why I'm going on about that is here's an opportunity now to get to Broome, Sullivan, get back on that canoe of yours and row back to Sydney, and get someone in there that actually knows how to do it and set it up properly so that value the proposition's better.
If they bring in an Australian coach, if you're thinking along those lines, if you purchase top money for an Aussie coach, whoever it may be, I know that they're trying to chase Craig Fitzgibbon, but he won't leave the Roosters. If you bring in an Aussie coach, you almost have to bring in 6 of those Australian players with him, don't you? Because then he won't fit within the realm of that culture. You know, it might not work that way, Kempy. If you bring in that Aussie coach that everyone's talking about, we'll give $1 million to Bellamy and we'll give him $250,000 afterwards to be a great mentor and ambassador for the club. But unless he brings with him Cameron Smith and 3 others, I don't know if he'll be able to adopt that culture that he's about to take on. You know, I don't know if that's going to work.
Look, who watched the Michael Jordan stuff? Yeah. So you watch the Michael Jordan stuff. The most prevalent stuff about the Michael Jordan documentary for me was the building of a legacy. Okay, so the Warriors have never been able to build a legacy because change management happens all the time. And if you get a CEO and a coach coming all the time, they're bringing new thoughts and new people and therefore, if you might be a star one day for the old coach and another new coach comes in and he says, mate, you're not my star, you can go and find another club. It happened to me when I was playing over in England. What they haven't got is they haven't got a heart. The club doesn't beat. Their heart is on. It's on paddles. It's on life support all the time. And the reason it is because they keep changing the heart. They haven't built that DNA around what this club's about. I'll take it down to simple recruitment strategy. It's not about bringing Australians to the club. It's about putting together a team that is going to win you a competition and then filling in the gaps behind it to make sure that a legacy built on the salary cap is down the road. So you may do 4 or 5 years of tough love, but your plan is to then hit the mark in 4 to 5 years. If you look at Johnson and Townsend at Cronulla, all right, they were the halves of the Warriors. Yeah, I'm thinking about this morning. They were the halves of the Warriors. They couldn't win them a competition. But John Morris thinks they're going to be the halves that win him a competition, and rightly so. At 29, they possibly could do that. You know what I mean? With the team that's been built around them. So I think the problem, people got to stop saying you need to bring more Aussies to the club. No, you need to have a strategy and a structure that is going to win you a competition and give you a nucleus of a DNA that's going to sustain all this change. Because we just change too often. That's the problem.
The heart. We all thought the heart was Stephen Kearney. A lot of rugby league fans thought he was creating that legacy. He had earned the respect of the players. He took them to a final, got them into the finals. He was meant to be that heart that was going to pump through the club, and he's gone now. So
I thought it was Aish.
Aish, late. You're the heart.
No, there's only so much a coach can do. And where Kempy's, I had this argument with someone the other day about the Aussie players. I go, there's enough Kiwi players, but you look like Takiaho and Joseph Manu. Joseph Manu is the best centre in the comp, in my opinion, at the moment.
Really good. I agree.
He's gone to a good club with a good culture where they build them up. So it's got nothing to do with Aussie players and Kiwi players. Who beat Australia? Tonga. Tonga beat Australia. So it's not about the players. It's about the roots of the club, building from the bottom up. Like, you have enough talent in New Zealand to build a successful club that can go on for many years and just keep funding players and keep fueling the first grade with great players. But they just don't have the system at the moment. And it's something that they're going to have to work on.
And of course,
sorry, Tony, I've got two things I wanted to quickly throw in there. You said, anyone who watched the Michael Jordan documentary, we all put our hands up. I thought you were about to say we need a Phil Jackson, because I liked the way Phil Jackson worked with the Bulls, and he had the idea that here's my game plan. I need a guy who's going to get heaps of rebounds. Dennis Rodman, he's crazy. He needs to have a little purge valve. He needs to vent and go off to Vegas for a couple. He worked with these pieces. He had his Michael Jordan. He had a game plan in the triangle offense where Jordan wasn't into it to begin with, but he says, "Trust me, do it, and it will work." And he had that plan, and he just kept putting pieces in. Steve Kerr, Paxton, like all these things, and moved forward with it. Is there someone like that at the moment that is available that would be able to do that for the Warriors, and is that what they're after?
Of course there is. But the reality is, it was the little guy with the bung eye that with the big puku. He was the one that made all the crucial decisions.
Jerry Krause.
Jerry Krause. So he was the brains behind it. But he had a very good owner that allowed him to make these decisions that some people thought were really poor decisions at the beginning. One, they went out and got Michael Jordan, and then the second thing is they built teams around him. But you know what he did? He actually changed those players out and in to continue a legacy that they went on for years and years. The answer to your question, yes, you can do it. You can find someone that can do it. But I just hope that this time this happens. We've got a new owner. All right, that I hope is, I know Robbo. I think he's in it for all the right reasons, and it's going to be around for a long time. That can create something like that. I don't think they had that with the previous owners. I think they were in it for all the wrong reasons, and didn't give it the support that it needed. So it's not about the coach. I'll tell you that right now. And Baker said that the coach is but part of the jigsaw. You know what I mean? You need a really good owner and a good leader that can come together and say, what are we building over the next 10 to 20 years?
And recruitment, we need
and allow them to do it.
So with this, sorry, with the broom that you're talking about going in and having a sweep, how heavy a sweep is this going to be, are you thinking, that needs to happen? You've already had shots at the recruitment. What else needs to be swept, in your opinion?
Well, I'd like to walk 10 miles in Robbo's shoes. You know, if I had $140 million and I bought the Warriors, I would want all my own people in there. So I would actually just say, look, everyone has to apply for their roles. The roles have changed, and everyone's going to have to reapply for the roles. And I'd want to be making sure that the first person I get in there as CEO is really up to the job and is willing to is probably going to be there for the next 10 years. So who is that person? I don't think. See, when I see go and get Bellamy, stop pissing around with the coaches. Go and get the best coach. You know, put all your little pools of money together and go and give him his lifetime deal. You know, what I'm basically saying is go and get Krause from Chicago. You know what I mean? That's the. Everyone's talking about the wrong people.
He's gone too.
Yeah, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about the coach and the players. No. Go and get the right person that can put all the pieces together, and then actually have the balls to stand in front of everyone and say, this is what our long-term strategy is. These guys have built. Look, you've got Roger at fullback, but you haven't got a. They're good players, but you haven't got a marquee half and you haven't got a marquee hooker. Yeah, you ain't got a marquee lock and you ain't got a marquee centre. Now, those 5 people in your team, if you have a look at the top teams, they're marquee players that get them and win them competitions. And then their backbone built around them are players that can live with those guys. And Melbourne do it really well, bring some gumboot in from another club and he ends up playing State of Origin. You know what I mean? Because he's with those marquee blokes that are just continually churning around and turning in, perfect performances week in, week out. We don't have that here. We haven't had that for a long time here. And I think that's what Robbo can do. He can just change it by putting the right person in place.
I listened to that Matty John show the other day. He brought up a good point. The NRL could help out the Warriors. Because if you look at the AFL, right, the AFL help out the Sydney Swans and the teams outside Melbourne. They give them extra money so it can sort of lure people to the club. The Warriors are a big part of the NRL, but we get no help from the NRL and we pay overs for players to come. So if we want those players, we're paying double what they'd get if they're in Sydney just to come and live in New Zealand. So then and there you lose half of your players already, especially the good ones from New Zealand. They go over because they're getting peanuts over here. I wouldn't mind if the NRL, said, New Zealand Warriors, you're important. Here's a couple extra million. Help you out.
I'm not sure that sounds like that would be able to win the competition then. Isn't there like some ungodly rule that the Warriors can never win the comp because it's an Australian competition? I don't know. Yeah. What about the obviously news of Junior Tuva, who's from Melbourne? I saw him playing high school rugby. He was actually a lock at the time with my young fella in the Kings first 15. Dude was rake skinny, like big,
a fast lock. That boy's
really fast lock, yeah, and broke away for a couple of tries that blew our minds. But Tony, you've always been a big fan of building a team from the wing inwards.
Wing out.
Yeah. Are we? Is that the answer to all our problems, or are we just going through a cycle right now where throw some players in and excite the fans to keep them engaged?
Well, I think there's a bit of both. I think it's a good opportunity to have a look at the talent. I think we were doing that for Sydney City and Canberra with their 2 front rowers and giving them first great experience. But also we do need depth. I don't think we have a backbone at the club, which hasn't been built by their recruitment structure. So Junior could well and truly be a good player for the club, but there's a lot more depth that needs to be built in and around that type of player. So the thing about New Zealand, we all know this, is that we can produce so many players. Like you can go out and sign so many junior tubers. You just have to look at the top football tier, rugby tier. You know what I mean? You go into any of those first 15 games and you can pull out a heap of juniors. But it's about the decision of what they're coming into from a club perspective. One of the things when I get asked from parents who phone me up and say, "Oh, my kid's being asked to come to a camp in Brisbane or a camp in Canberra or whatever, and they said, yeah, what should we do? And I said, well, just ask them for percentages on their junior structure. So what is it? Like, what school do they go to? What junior grades do they come from? Where do they go to as far as junior development? How well is their junior development working? And get some percentages on all that, so you can actually sit down and look at it on a piece of paper, and then don't just ask them, ask the next club the same thing and measure it against that, as opposed to, we all know that, I think the current rate of a Kiwi coming out of my hometown and playing in the NRL is 0.024. So, mate, they're every 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What about, I mean, because it's an interesting thing when you are involved in that first thing, especially the Auckland 1A competition, and you're a parent of the kids, and all the kids in their last year or even the year before, they're starting to get offers, right? And there's almost like a badge of honour when you be able to say, hey, my son's been asked to come along and train with the Melbourne Storm. There's like 3 or 4 teams, glory teams, that once the parent says that, they're like, oh, well, he's got a huge future. Straight away, there's this thing. But it was always, there's a couple of kids who had contracts with the Warriors, and it was always kind of like a good on you, man. Go help the Warriors. Whereas the ones who got offers, and I remember hearing Junior was going to the Melbourne Storm, and there was another, I think Judd is his name, who's playing actually around the first grade sort of fringes, who's over there from the Melbourne Storm, all a part of the same first 15. Those kids that came with the little certificate saying the Melbourne Storm were interested in me always had kind of like this extra, everyone was like, oh, wow, star waiting to happen kind of feel. And I don't know how you get that, change the Warriors recruiting to more of a, good on you, fella, go and try and, grind out a win from time to time, to, well done, man. Yes, Warrior. Do you know what I mean? The same happened with the Blues, and, oh, he's going to Blues development, or he's going to, he's going to go down and play for Canterbury. People were like, oh, wow, the kid who's going to Canterbury got a real good shot, but the Blues, before this year, that is, there's like a feeling amongst the parents that, are the Warriors really an option, or is that just kind of like playing tiddlywinks and you'll have to get a real job?
I think it comes down to what Tony mentioned a couple of weeks ago with the development programs here in New Zealand, and whether or not that's the New Zealand Rugby League that have to be more heavily invested into that. But it has to be more an auspicious kind of offer to these kids, so that they, first of all, it's slightly lucrative, which they wouldn't expect in the first place, and money has to be poured in there. But the development program has the systems and structures in place, that same sort of structure that Tony's talking about, that will bring out the heart of the Warriors and spend half a decade, invest heaps of money, get the right people, and build a premiership, not just a great team, build a premiership. The development program for rugby league here has to be the same, because Blake mentioned before, there's a whole lot of Kiwis out there playing for other clubs that are absolutely sensational at the moment and playing some of the best rugby league of their lives, and we've lost them from New Zealand and probably lost them forever to represent these Australian NRL clubs. So if there's someone out there from New Zealand Rugby League that knows how to format a decent development program where these kids, can be poached from rugby or kept in rugby league and be brought up through the ranks and be paid good money and have some of the best coaching in the world to teach them to be better football players, so that when they're playing for the Warriors, they've come through that system rather than be lost and never to be brought back again. I just don't know how you're going to develop that program.
I'll go back to that Matty John's question that Blake brought up around NRL support, and it's like having a tsunami and saying, well, here's $2 million, now go and build your buildings, and we've realised that it's going to cost you $10 million to build it. It's such an open-ended question. But what that question doesn't have that supports it is an understanding, and a deep understanding of the New Zealand Rugby League landscape. So, I had a beer with one of the Warrior owners a couple of weeks ago, and I just mentioned him. I said, the problem you have in New Zealand, and one of the things that you can fix straight away, is if you can get the NZRL, the Auckland Rugby League, and the Warriors all on the same page. All right. So Auckland Rugby League, the participation rate's around 80% of the competition in New Zealand. The NZRL's an NSO that are meant to be developing programs across the country, and of course the Warriors, their professional game. When you go back to Blake's question around NRL support, well, unfortunately the NRL don't support New Zealand. Okay, so we have a catchment area that should be home to the Warriors. Every kid that plays in New Zealand should be, the first port of call should be to play for the Warriors. That would be the big strategy, 10-year, 20-year strategy that the Warriors should hang their hat on. So what do they need to do there? They need to get in the grassroots. That's an NSO. That's the New Zealand Rugby League, and they need to brand Warriors throughout New Zealand. But what happens, because the NRL allowed to happen, is that the other 15 NRL teams go around New Zealand branding themselves in each part of the region and taking the likes of Dylan Brown, Tohu Harris to Melbourne, you know what I mean? The boys at Sydney City and so forth. So the Warriors on the back end, they are pushing shit uphill right from the start. So if you're talking support, if you're talking development, the first thing is the government needs to step in and support rugby league in this country. Putting in good club support, school, making the charters of school use rugby league as an opportunity to move. Most rugby schools are still fighting against rugby league. But the biggest part of that structural support from the NRL is to tell the other 15 clubs to piss off. Go to Brisbane, go to Sydney, go and do your homework over there, and then when the Warriors can pick the eyes out of the best players, and they may have a shit, because they have had a shit development system, then you can have them when they're done with them. And if they lose the good ones, which they have done probably 80% of the time, then that's their own fault. But at the moment, there are 15 other teams in this country, and people getting tracksuits. And I'll go to your take on it, Mark. I've been offered to go to Melbourne, or I've been offered to go to the Warriors. No, you've been offered nothing, mate. You know what I mean? You're a first grader. Like, parents, wake up. It's going to cost you shitloads of money to get that kid over there, and shitloads in support. He's on a start of a pathway. The support then should come from the NRL to say, well, we'll support the country, the club, and the parents to make sure that that's going to work. And it's just not here. Unfortunately, we don't have that.
I love that. Protecting the New Zealand player base, though, that would be help enough, right? Straight away, you've got help enough from the NRL by saying, here's the rules. You can't be scouting New Zealand schoolboys if you're any other team other than the Warriors.
I had a conversation with the West Tigers recruitment manager one time when I was running rugby league in New Zealand, and he didn't want to pay the $5,000 to the club for taking one of the young players. And I just went straight to the NRL and I said, do your job. You know what I mean? Because what's happening is not only are they coming into the country, but they're not paying for those players through the development system and the fees to get back. Rugby league in New Zealand is basically in a sewage system with an umbrella. They're just sitting in there in a sewage system, and it's 15 of those clubs, and I've got to say the Warriors, because Warriors don't pay development fees to the clubs, that are just all over the umbrella. And the NRL, and this is why I'm excited about Volandis. If we can get a key person in front of Volandis from New Zealand Rugby League, and I've got to say I have no confidence in the current people that are running the game, we could possibly fix this major issue within the country. The first one that they should do is policy the 15 clubs coming into this country and raping and pillaging the rugby league grassroots. It's just really simple.
Yeah.
How many beers did you have before you told him that? Will you remember?
Who told who?
When didn't you say you told that to one of the Warriors owners?
Oh, yeah, no, I was trying to fill him up, mate. I was trying to fill him up. Nice. I'd had about 4. He'd just got through half, mate. But you haven't had a beer with me. You'd have your Blake.
No.
I don't know. I'd be interested to see that one. Lavina and I can sit back and sip bread.
Yeah, one man at the end, and it's.
Mate, you come and have a beer with me, son. You'll have so much fun. Don't worry about that.
All right, let's keep it to move through some purging. I've got written down here, Tony, you wanted to talk about Benji Bennett and the Broncos.
Yeah, look, I love Benji. I think he fills a hole. No, you're looking for players. I think he fills a hole. You probably get him on next to nothing because the Tigers will have to pay most of his salary. So, why not bring the kid home? You need leadership. You're lacking depth in your team, and the kid can play first grade. And I just don't think Benji can do anything wrong, mate. What he's done for our country as far as rugby league goes is what Richard McCall's done for rugby union. So. If they are thinking about that, I'd support it. He is on his final hurrah, the old mate, but still there. You're looking at all sorts of players. The Warriors, he'd fill a gap. And as far as Bennett goes, I actually find it really amusing that this oxygen thief has still got so much to say. You know what I mean? Like he's entertainment. I love Wayne. I think he's obviously the best coach that rugby league's had. I met with a guy called I met with a guy at San Diego once when I did a study tour over there called, his name slips my mind, but it'll come to me with a bit of CTE going on there. But he reminds me a lot of Wayne Bennett, like what Wayne says, and I've witnessed this in the Kiwi team, is that he doesn't say much, but when he says it, it really is on point. And the stuff about Brisbane and Seabold, I really liked it. Like he said, hey man, I was willing to stay there for another 2 years, and I had a team that I thought could win a competition. And then he goes, do you think Seabold, who just got these guys to the finals, would leave this team knowing that he was going to go and lose 5 in a row? And you're just sitting there going, end of story, mate. You're just kind of blowing their legs off, you know what I mean? So good on him, Wayne, for stepping up to the plate, mate. I think that chairman come out and what he said about Wayne Bennett, saying blaming him on the rosters. You can't blame the coach on a roster, you know what I mean? They have people like Sullivan that are also around that roster, so it's a big call from Brisbane to start blaming other people than what they got. I actually think Seabold's struggling. There's something going on there, and hopefully that's still going on this week when the Warriors play them.
They won their first 2 games, the Bronx, before COVID. So they were 2 from 2, and then we had the break with the COVID and come back. And everyone, when you name their pack, it's phenomenal, but it's young. And they have that real Warriors issue sometimes that when they're trailing, they don't know how to get back in front again. But they don't seem like they're playing good footy for themselves or their coach. And when Seabold decided to do that swap, I was surprised because I knew he took the Bunnies to the finals in 18, and he was touted as the next man to take them to a premiership after Maguire. But he grew up in Queensland. He played some footy in Queensland, and obviously had some roots there where he thought he could maybe take on the players that Wayne Bennett started with, and could continue with them. It's a very strange game, rugby league. A lot can happen in a week, let alone 5 weeks. And I know they've lost their last 5 in a row, but who knows? They might come out and beat the Warriors this weekend, win the next 3 games, and then all of a sudden that 5-year program that he was talking about when he first took over this young Broncos team may come into fruition. So I don't know if they'll act too quickly on trying to get rid of him. I'm all right with the super coach coming out and saying that was a good enough team for me. I don't know why they're not working for you. And it's very unlike Wayne Bennett to come out and say something like that. But I thought, yeah, good on him. Just quickly with Benji Marshall, I watched him on 360 last night, and I thought to myself, what if he could be the player for the Warriors? What if the Warriors could buy him? And I really respect him as a person. I've loved interviewing him over the years. But, I've never forgiven him for doing the dirty on rugby league and turning to the dark side for that season with the Blues. I've actually never liked players that have gone and played for the other code, Tony, Blake, and then come back again. I've always thought rugby league made you who you were, and you owe to this game to stay true to this game, and yet you want to stay true to your wallet. And I think that's what Benji Marshall is. I think Benji Marshall is a player that will play great rugby league, and I know he's loyal, and I've seen the tears at the anthem. But I think he's a man that coming towards the end of his career, money will talk. So if the Warriors want to pay for him, I'm sure he'll come, because that loyalty won't stand with the Tigers, despite the goose step and the grand final victory many, many years ago. Money will talk if you want him. Do I think he's the right man for the job to come over? No, I do not. I think Benji Marshall is 35 years of age and is getting too old and is not the player that the Warriors need right now.
I don't know. Benji's Benji. He got, 6 Dally M points after 3 games? Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, that's class. 35 to still be doing that. I didn't see the sacking. I didn't see him getting dropped. I didn't see that. They've obviously gone good. But I think that was more, there was something more in it, like they wanted Brooks to stand up. Because Benji's developed over the years. Mm. When he was younger, he was the flash and all that. Now he's smarter. He's all up there. I reckon he'd be good for the Warriors. And I reckon if the Warriors are ever going to get him, now would be the time, because they're not coming home. He's not, I don't think he will move to New Zealand to play for the Warriors. I'm probably about 95% positive in my thinking that he won't move to New Zealand to play for the Warriors. So if the Warriors were ever going to get Benji Marshall, now would be the time while they're in Sydney. And I don't see anything wrong with it. I think he can help Chanel Harris-Tavita as well, a young half, and teach him, because remember, he's gone from flashy to now the brains of a team and running a team, so he can help him in that sense. And then going on to the Broncos situation, their team's good enough, man. It's stupid to come out and say I don't have a roster. Their team's good enough to make the 8. Their team's good enough to to play into the semis. Their problem is, I think at the moment, their attack's awful. Like, even if you go back to those first 2 games they won, it was because they had a freak named David Fafita who got the ball and ran over 4 people and sidestepped the fullback and scored a try. And I think they beat the Cowboys by 4 points or something.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
Bags.
Oh, I don't at all. I can't remember once ever doing anything like that. But yeah, no, like it was like individual brilliance. It was never a team effort like from the Broncos. So for Wayne to come out and say that, like, I reckon the Souths are going to go good this year. I reckon they're going to start hitting their straps once Latrell starts getting that confidence and everyone's on board for them. So, you know, Wayne's just once again proven he's the best in the business and letting everyone know it.
And you touched on Cameron Smith last week too, saying, you know, sign Cameron Smith and bring him home to develop the kids. And I think, you're right on the money. Benji's in Sydney, bring him into camp. You know, they've just sacked the coach. Add some experience, some support around the back of the coach too that can do. You know, you need halves and hookers coaches. I can guarantee you that. Who better than have Benji sitting around there?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that my favourite sentence of that spiel that you just gave us, Blake, was you're 95% sure of your thoughts.
Of positive
of Benji.
Thinking that Benji won't.
Yeah, just of your thoughts, not of.
Hey, and I did know. I told you it was going to come to me. That name. His name was Marty Schottenheimer. So it was just lost in the back of one of those concussions. It slowly made its way forward.
San Diego Chargers, old school coach.
That's right. That's right. Marty Tomlinson was the running back.
Yeah, LaDainian Tomlinson, Philip Rivers.
That's right. I went and had a beer with those boys.
Did you? With LT, one of the goats.
Yeah. Marty. Marty was a real good dude. He was just like Bennett, mate. He was actually about 100 when I met him.
Take the glasses off him, he'll look exactly like Bennett. They're the same person.
Yeah.
You've never seen them both in the same place at the same time.
Mate, he was the guy that, you know, because I was going into first grade coaching that following year, and he was the guy that said to me, don't have one-on-one media interviews. So that's where the Warriors media scrum started. So when I come back, I said to Richie Beck, I said, I'm not doing one-on-ones, mate. Get them all together. I'm doing a scrum. So I watched Marty do a scrum, mate. It was perfect. And he said to me, answer the questions before they ask you them. So I used to open up, and remember I used to open up and say, hey, I just want to tell you what training was like this week. You know, this guy's struggling with injuries, blah, blah, blah. And then the guys go, got any questions? And you get like 2 or 3 and you can walk away. You know what I mean?
You would have made Becky's life. Becky he hates sitting up one-on-ones.
Mate, no, mate. I think that's why he didn't like me, because I stopped him talking to everyone. I told you about that picture. You have a look at it, mate. Him and John Hart standing next to me, and Richie's looking at the camera with this big smile, mate, going, get out of there, man.
All right, have we purged enough about last week's games? Are we fine with that? Did anyone want to mention a player of note that they thought played really well, or Yep, you do, Lavina, go for it.
Yeah, I've got a player that was outstanding. I thought I stayed up very late on Saturday night because I had to pick up my teenage daughter from a party, but I was going to stay up late anyway because the Eels were playing the Raiders and it went into Golden Point. And my player of the round goes to an unassuming man that very much reminds me a lot of Ben Smith from the All Blacks. You'd walk past him down the street and have no idea that you've walked past someone who is supreme at what he does when he concentrates on what he needs to do. And Captain Clint Gutherson was outstanding for the Eels. He's an unassuming player. He doesn't want to be in the headline all the time, but he doesn't mind setting up a try.
Loves a dummy half run, doesn't he?
Loves a dummy half run, mate. Doesn't mind setting up a try. He doesn't mind stopping a try. And when Mitchell Moses was off for the second half, he had a shot, missed, pressure's on, had a shot, wins the game. He's the unassuming captain that you want out there, that you want to play for as you move to the finals. I
agree with you. I was going to say the exact same person. If you think when they kicked the ball down and he got his foot on the line, that was huge. It hurts me saying it because I think he layers up too much, and I wish someone would have come and like stiff arm because he layers up a bit too much. For me personally, but he's a talent. But, you know, hey, he was the player of the round, I reckon, as well, Lavina, with Mitchell Moses off and the things he did at the back end of the game for them to beat the Raiders as well.
Yeah, the Raiders look good. Those 2 tries in 6 minutes were impressive. Really, really impressive.
King Gutho, they reckon. King Gutho.
King Gutho.
They would do out west at Parramatta, though, because they've got nothing, mate. Well, they got a sewerage that runs through the middle of their town. You know what I mean? Jeez, of course they got to have a king called King Gutho. I don't have a best player. I just thought the Titans were bloody outstanding. I watched that game and they just weren't going to give in.
Yeah.
And I like seeing teams that are down the bottom of the competition get a win, and just the look on the players' faces about, man, I thought I forgot what that felt like, and their effort was, the top boys are flying. Power, Sydney City, geez, the injuries are starting to come in, and that's going to be really interesting what plays. But I just want to, the last thing I really want to say is about the referees and how pivotal they've been in the games. I think I actually watched one of the games on the weekend. I'm not going to say which one, but I thought the referee was biased to one side. I thought he was calling, and then I saw and I was just watching the game, and then I thought, man, it really feels to me as if he's making these calls for this one team and not for the other team. And so I went and looked at the stats the following day, and it was 2-1 on the reset calls, and I could have sworn that both teams we could have been done the same for the same thing at the same time. So with the referees, I think those appointments are going to be really important come the back end of the year when they get up. Teams are going to be sweating on that referee appointment. They've got so much more happening at the moment.
You got to remember, all the players these days do video study on the other teams. The referees do the same. And they call that, so people in their heads, like, they know Dylan Napper's going to sometimes go in and do a shoulder charge.
Yeah.
Or if it's Cameron Smith, okay, we'll give him a little bit more time. Or there's different people that get different rules. It certainly is. I agree with you.
And just quickly,
sorry.
Sharkies against Manly were impressive. I know, Tony Kemp, you're a big fan of the kicking game when it comes to tries in rugby league. I thought we should address the fact that Shaun Johnson is now leading try assists, and he had an impeccable kicking game. And he's confident when he kicks well, he plays well for me, Shaun Johnson. And I never expected the Sharkies to win, even though Manly didn't have Turbo. I still thought they would have put up a bit of an effort, but that looks as though, that might... It was an expectation I did not have for a victory there, but I was really impressed, not just with Shaun Johnson's game, but I guess the way the Sharkies played in general. But it's, for me, if Shaun's kicking game's impeccable, he plays great rugby league in general. So he didn't miss the tackles, and he still took on the line, and he dominated. He orchestrated the whole game through his kicking game. It was good to see for Shaun. I was real happy for him.
We love a good kick.
He loves that Shaun. He gave a touch, 44-38,
He does.
Look, I've never said I hate the kicking game. I said just take a point off it if they score a try from a kick.
That's hate.
Interesting.
That's hate speech.
That's hate speech.
Right,
let me throw through this week's games, and we'll find out who we think is the main event on the fight card.
I can't pick my nose at the moment, just quietly.
Yeah.
I'm having a shocker. I'm having a shocker, and I've got this mate called Ian, and he keeps phoning me up, and he just says, "I've got you covered on this side." Mate, it's a marathon, mate. I can't believe he's beating me in the tipping competition.
Well, I don't want tips. I just want to know what we reckon the main card event is on the fight card today, this weekend. So we got Thursday. We've got the Storm taking on the Roosters. That's got to be up there as the big one, surely.
I kicked that one off.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. We got the Raiders taking on the Dragons. Dragons still the Dragons. The Eels taking on the Cowboys. That should be a goodie. Although I don't think it rates up there with the Thursday night game. Titans Sharks. That might be interesting.
No
go there. Warriors Broncos. You know what that gives? I have the feeling, when you went to the stock cars and you were there to watch the real fast ones that would go around really quickly. The Broncos versus the Warriors feels like that sort of 7th, 8th race that they pull out, and it's either some dudes who've just been out the back working on a shitty old car. They've smashed the windows out and put some roll cage in it, and they're like out there. That's what it feels like in the stock car event. They're like 8th on the race card that just no one's really into, not kind of sure how it's going to end, but hopefully there's some destruction on the way through. No agreements?
I'll just go back to my kids' day, then down to Stratford going to stock cars, mate. That was a great night.
It's good times. Tigers Panthers, and then of course moving on to Sunday's games, got the Knights taking on the Seagulls.
That's a good game.
That's a really good game. That might be up there.
That's a hate game, that one. The Knights hate Manly.
Yeah.
Okay, Tigers Penrith as well.
Yeah, Tigers Penrith. That'll be about Bulldogs and Rabbitohs at the end. What do we think is the best game of the weekend? Which one are we most looking forward to seeing?
Thursday night. I like the Roosters. I like the look of the Roosters and Melbourne Storm. No Victor Radley for the Roosters, and all that question mark out about Bankwest Stadium and injuries and ACLs and all that sort of thing. But I think if any questions are going to be asked of the Roosters this year, they proved against Parramatta that they were very impressive a couple of weeks ago and they could win that one. I think Melbourne might do a fair bit of research on the Roosters, and I reckon that's going to be the clash of the round. I'm looking forward to that Thursday night game.
Yeah,
Roosters by 20.
yeah. Munster's out, so that's massive. That's why that's not my. The only reason that's not my game of the round is because of that, the injuries. Radley, Munster. So that's why I've gone Tigers, Penrith. Tigers are going good at the moment, flying, and Penrith are top of the table.
Kickow, Viliami.
Top of the table, Penrith.
Mate, I'd throw the checkbook at Kikau. Get him over.
So would I, mate. That's
100%.
my plan for the Warriors because he makes Stephen Crichton look good. That's how good Kikau is. You know,
He's bloody.
I love him.
He can play. No, my pick of the round's the Knights and Manly. It's a hate match. You know, grudge match always has been since the first time they come up and played. They actually the first game the Knights ever played in 1988 at Marathon Stadium, and it's been a grudge match ever since. And I'm looking forward to watching that game because I want to see if the Knights can bounce back under O'Brien. But they should have won that game on the weekend. You know what I mean? Like they would switch. They were on, they're off, they're on, they're off. You know what I mean? So he'd be looking for a bit more of a consistent effort. And if they can't towel up Manly with Trbojevic out and a couple of other blokes who's struggling,
you're going to call them pretenders, aren't you? You're going to say they're not ready for the 8. They're not ready for playoff football.
Told you so. And we're
I'm already confident, man. I can't start getting confident from you, otherwise I'm just.
They're not winning the comp, mate.
They're not winning the comp, mate. All right.
You recorded the same.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Can't wait.
This is the first time in League and Order history that we've actually all gone for a separate game of the week because I want to take me down to the Stockway. Take me down to I want to see two beat-up vehicles going at it in the 5th race on the card and see the Broncos and the Warriors go at it. Who's going to bounce back? Who's going to even play the game? That's my game of the
one coach a job and might cost another one a job if they lose. Do you know what I mean? Like Seabold can't lose too many in a row and the Warriors don't have one. So if the Warriors, going to be a lot of pressure on Anthony.
Let's see some roll caging. All right, team, thank you so much for you. Hey, enjoy the league round this weekend. Plenty of good games as we've decided because we couldn't even decide on the main fight card. You enjoy Queenstown too. You're down there for a couple of weeks. Lavina, you're going to snowboard.
I'm boarding for a couple of weeks, looking forward to some time down there. So I'm sure I'd still be able to have a chat with you boys. I'll be watching heaps of rugby league still, which won't be a problem.
Can you make it a really scenic background, like mountains flowing down in the background?
I'll have the Remarkables behind me. How about that? And a mulled wine, mate. And a
I
mulled
like
wine.
that. Aish, you
School
get
holidays, geez, those kids are lucky. They go skiing down the slopes. Just so I know, me and my kids will go down to Waitara, jumping off the bridge with Marc and do some bombs.